guys remember the old SL2500 that the clock was dead and that controls the power, so I couldn't turn it on and off? Well, we're going to solve that problem today. You guys might remember this Betamax. This is an SL2500 that it was given to me dead. And we did a video on this one a while back where I determined what the problem was. In fact, I did a couple of videos on it. One I gave up because I walked away from it for a while. Didn't give up. I walked away from it. Because the battery that was used to back up the clock leaked. And it leaked all over the board. And it damaged the clock. So the clock display is dead. And that controls the power. So the power was dead. And spending more time on it, I figured out that, yeah, that's why it wouldn't turn on. It wasn't a power supply issue, which I initially thought it had. It was actually a power control issue because the clock itself was dead. So by cutting the wire that controlled the power, well, the machine works. It's got power. It turns on as soon as you plug it in. I thought, you know, this is a machine I probably could sell, but with no power switch, it's going to be a hard sell. So I thought, you know what? Maybe we can just add a little external power switch, a little toggle switch just to turn it on and off. The clock doesn't work. That's fine. Nobody's buying one of these things to record programs off TV. There's nothing to record off TV. There's no analog broadcast. Someone who's buying an old Beta machine, they're buying it because they got tapes that they want to play. And this machine plays fine. So I think what we'll do is we're going to try to add an external power switch to this. I don't know whether I'm going to mount it on the front here or maybe just rewire one of these other switches in here, like the one that selects between the clock and the counter, or bright or dim, because obviously they don't work. Rewire one of these switches to turn it on and off. What do you think? I think we'll take this apart and see what's going to be the easiest way to do it, because all I need to do is control that power lead, which we already identified, which I've got cut in here. We just need to be able to toggle that, and that'll allow me to turn it on and off, and that's the purpose of this video. So if someone else has got one of these machines that the clock has gone foobar, because, well, the clock going foobar on these was a problem. I remember back in the day, it would change a few chips. The main processor failed on these. It's a big square flat pack with like 100 pins. I remember changing a few of them over the years, back when these were still, you know, popular. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is a nice mechanism. I mean, it's not my favorite, but this is a nice mechanism. And it has all direct drive motors. For those that remember, right? It has a separate motor for the drum and the capstan, and each of the real motors have a separate motor, and there's a loading motor and there's a front loader motor. So there's a total of 6 motors. That makes it desirable for people that like that type of transport. Myself, again, not my favorite, because I found the ones with the more motors tended to have more issues, but they do make for smooth transport, that's for sure. And they work, when they work great. It's got all those fancy features like slow-mo and forward and reverse and double speed playback, etc. And it'll do audio dubbing. It's not a hi-fi machine, it's just a mono machine, but it does audio dubbing. So let's get started and see what we can do to reconfigure a switch. I think probably reconfiguring one of these switches in the front might make more sense. Maybe the bright dim switch or something. Just something that we can use to toggle the power on and off. So I'll start by pulling the front panel. And we'll see how easy it is to access that switch on the front to repurpose it. It shouldn't be too difficult. I forget how this thing comes apart. It should just pop out. I may have to take the bottom off. think I have to loosen the bottom to get this out of this one. It's been a while. It's been a while since I popped these ones apart. Maybe not. The clip here that's got to come out. There we go. That should lift it off. And I got to pull that out of there. That should lift this off. I think. I might be wrong, but I think it comes off. Yeah, there we go. All right. Good old dead clock. What was nice about this one is it had a real-time counter. Hours, minutes, and seconds. I think the clock display actually displayed seconds on this too, if I'm not mistaken. Get the lights in here. They're green neon NE2 bulbs, not LEDs, but NE2. So there's high voltage on this display to fire those lamps. Cool. Look at the little NE2 bulbs. I should keep these. These are green neon bulbs. See? NL. They're listed. Neon lamp. They need about 60 volts minimum to make them fire. And they used green ones. I'm almost tempted just to grab all those lamps out of there just because they're so unique. The channel buttons still work. As far as I know, the tuner still works on this. But there's a high voltage inverter to give the voltage required for the lamps to fire them. And I think that was on this board here. It was under the shield here. It also generated the high voltage for the display. Pull the display out or remove the couple screws and I can lift this whole entire display out. I mean, who knows? Maybe I could get this stupid clock to work. There's a wire that's not plugged into anything, but I don't remember where that ever went. I think it was just hanging loose in there. I don't know what it was for. I remember seeing it, but I don't remember what this thing... Like, I don't see a plug that it plugs into. You would think that there'd be a plug somewhere within reach of it, but I don't see one. I just noticed that when I took it apart, there was just this plug that's just hanging there. I'm not the first person to be in here because there's screws that are missing. So, like this has been removed too. Trying to pull this display apart and see if there's anything obvious on here. Maybe if I can get the display to work, then I can get everything to work. Because it's all tied into the clock, right? This comes apart like that. And there's this transformer down here that does the step up, and there's the inverter down here which generates the high voltages, and this is the chip that I've changed. I changed a couple of those over the years. Like many years ago we changed that chip out because the clock didn't work. Just poke around in here and see if any voltages are missing. Or whether it's the actual board itself that's bad. Like the display, the IC.
Just turn love around. She worked hard for the life that we've built. Now I'm tearing it down like a house made of silk. Every shot I take, it just brings out the worst.
There's no power getting to this at all. We got negative 33 volts on that cap. 5 volts, so there's power on here. And 12 volts on that one, so it does have power. Nothing here. There is power getting to the collector of the transistor, so it has got power. It's just not working. Likely the chip itself. Oh, why the neon bulbs aren't working? They should come on. I know that the tuner works because I can change the channels, and it does work. At least I think it works. I see the lights coming on the channel board, so. Yeah, there's power on this board, but the display's not lighting up. It's going to be the chip that's bad. The microcontroller. Anyway, what I want to do is I want to repurpose one of these switches that's on the front here. Maybe the dim switch or something. One of these switches on the front I want to repurpose to control the power. And since I got this out, this will be relatively easy to just grab a trace here, right, and just use it to go to the power wire to control the power. That way the power can be turned on and off using one of the switches as an alternative to the power button that no longer works, right? Because how it works on this is the power button signals the timer that it wants to turn on, and then the timer turns the power onto the machine, and it turns it off. So with the timer not functional, it won't turn on. That was the problem. So I think, which switch do I want to use here? Probably, I don't know, the clock counter switch or the bright dim switch, one of the two. This is the clock counter switch, and this is the bright dim switch. I think probably the clock counter, or the clock counter is probably going to be the easiest one, because I can just sever a couple traces right here, put a couple wires on there, and just use them to connect the two wires that I disconnected, the blue wires here, wherever the heck they went. This blue wire here that controls the power. Just put that switch across these two wires. That'll pull it to ground and kill the power. And then you can have a power switch on the front. I think that's what I'm going to do on this, just because I don't want to put a lot of effort into it, because I know that the timer is shot. But I'd like to have a switch on the front that can turn it on and off, because at least then I can sell it and tell the person, okay, the power button doesn't work on the front, but because the timer's dead, that's what controls the power. We rewired the switch that's selected between the clock and the counter to operate as a power switch to turn the unit on and off. I think that's the way I'm going to go on this one. It'd be wonderful if we could get this timer to go and get this clock to work, but I'm pretty sure there's a fault on this, because, as I mentioned, we had these chips fail. Like, I changed a few of them back in the day when these units were still around, and they were dead. Like, they wouldn't work. You couldn't set the clock, and the unit was dead. and we changed the chip. So because I have experience with these failing before, causing the set to be dead, that is what I assume is wrong with this one. And it probably happened because when the battery that was up here, it's gone now, but the battery leaked all over the board and caused a short and kicked out that processor in the process. That's what I think happened on this one. Another reason I know this thing had been into before is because the mic connector on the front was not screwed down. The screw had never been placed back in properly, so I tightened that up. But again, this machine was given to me in dead state a few years ago, and somebody had obviously been into it, gave up on it, and left it for me to figure out what was wrong with it. The first thing I had to do is got to cut. Will that work as a cutter? Probably. Cut this trace here. Cut both of these traces. To isolate this, because I don't want anything feeding back into the circuitry. It's going to have a control voltage on it, so we're just going to cut these traces. And then I'll solder the wires onto the switch directly. I'm going to have it set so that when the switch is in the on position, the machine's off, and when the switch goes open, it'll turn on. Cut there. I'm pretty sure I'm through that trace. It is severed. There. That should do it. Got a little piece of jumper wire here. So put that on. Alright, let's mount the display back, and I'll get the wires routed around the back here and put the display board back in place and hook it up and make sure it turns on and off. And I guess I took on an extra screw. So that goes in like that, so we can access those switches, and throw the screws back in to hold the display in place, and get the front cover back on. Move the wire around over here so I can splice it in. You know what? I'm going to take these little neon bulbs, because green neon bulbs are kind of rare. Well, yeah, green neon bulbs are kind of rare these days. So I'm going to pop all these little neon bulbs out just to have. Just because green neon is cool. Used to be able to get them. I don't think you can get these things anymore. But since they're not working on here anyway, might as well take them out. Reuse them in something else. So we'll just pull these little neon bulbs out. And I'll put them away for a future project. Like the Goofy Light. Remember Goofy Light? That little Radio Shack P-Box kit? I built one of those when I was like, I don't know, 10 years old. I had like 5 little neon lamps and a little inverter and charging up capacitors through different resistors, and the way you wired it, you could either have them so that they fired in sequence or that they fired at random. I love that little kit. I used to have that thing as a nightlight when I was a kid, and I'd just stare at the thing. The little orange lights blinking away. Called it Goofy Light. I remember it got walloped by the power supply when I was building it because it stepped up the 9-volt battery to like 60 volts or so, or whatever it took. Basically what it was just a little inverter, and it charged up a series of small capacitors through resistors, and when the voltage got high enough to trigger the neon bulb, the lamp would fire and that would discharge the cap and start the cycle over again. I thought it was the coolest little kit. I think it was probably one of the first of those P-Box kits that Radio Shack sold back in the early 70s. 73, 74, something like that. It was one of the first kits I ever built. And I've built a lot of kits over the years. I got a Heathkit receiver. Or is it an amplifier? It might be just an amplifier. It's here. It's buried. I'll have to dig it out someday, and we'll go through that. We'll go through the old Heathkit, see whether it works. I don't know if it works or not. It did at one time. Probably doesn't anymore because it's been sitting around for 50 years. Okay, I got 14 little neon bulbs. Green neon bulbs. And what makes them green is, well, they have green phosphorus. Neon light. The neon emits orange, but I don't know if they've got any argon. They might have argon in here as well, but maybe a little bit of mercury to produce ultraviolet light, which makes the lamp glow orange or green. I can fire one up. I can fire one of those things up. Just got to put a resistor on it. If I hook it across mains, it's going to explode, but if I put a resistor across them, I can fire them up. But we're not going to do that today. We'll do that another day. And that just goes in there like that. And I got the front. This piece has to go on. I have to get all the switches down so that I can line them up. Put this piece back on. And then wire it up and see what happens. Okay, that faceplate is back on. We'll drop this in place. And how is this held in place? I think it just sat in there. Clipped on these little blue clips. Something like that. Fits on these little blue pins. They go in those holes. And it sits in place like that. And then the front cover can snap in place. That's on place. That's in place there. Alright, now to attach the wires down here to the little blue wires that I cut to make it work. So that I'm just going to attach it right here onto these two that I cut off and use this to switch the unit on and off. Always keep plugs. So I cut it back a bit just so that if I ever had to, I could use that plug for something. Wonderful. It's not even 20 gauge. It's like 22 gauge. So we'll just use the other tools that I have at my disposal, namely the good old Klein snips, which are not really Klein because my Kleins are in the house. I have a set of Kleins, but these are knockoffs. But they do the same thing. That's a custom soldering tip, by the way. Years of abuse can produce this. It's a joke. It's a joke. But seriously, any pro tech, diagnostic engineer, whatever, they'll use their soldering tip until it's like down to nothing. We won't change that thing until it no longer works. If we can solder with it, we'll use it. Eventually it'll break and then I'll change it. As long as it's working, I'll keep using it. Good enough. What else is falling apart here? Good enough for testing. I have the sub power switch turned off. Okay, the switch is off here in counter position, and the machine is off. When I flick that up, look, the power turns on. Now the power turns off. I like it. There we go. Now we got a power switch. Woohoo! Let's test the machine out. Make sure everything still works, that I didn't break anything else. But yeah, you know, I mean, yeah, it's not right, but hey, it's better than having to unplug the machine to turn it off. Right? So it will get the job done. I'll just mount the screws down here to screw down the board a bit. It's certainly seen better days, but considering how old this thing is, you know, and it still works, so I might get $100 for something like this. I got $100 for the last one. I know some people say, oh, it's worth a lot more than that. Well, I don't know. Not around here. It doesn't appear to be. They don't appear to be. But I'll get what I'll take whatever I can get for it. That's for sure. I won't, you know, I won't give it away because it's a beta machine, and they're rare as hen's teeth these days, especially the better ones. There's some that I will never sell. Like I won't sell my SLHF1000s. And I won't sell my 900, and I won't sell the 2700, which is the hi-fi version of this one. I won't sell the 5200 because that's the first of the hi-fi machines. There's some that I won't sell. To show you that the tuner does in fact work even though the display doesn't work, I'll turn it on. There's my security cameras. And turn it off. Cool. One of the neat things about this machine and the SL2000 and 2001 and the 2700 is it had the 14-pin camera connector. This one on the back. I think the 2700 had it on the front, but this one's on the back. So you could plug your home video camera, your Sony camera, into it. But look, for the audio, they used a mini plug instead of like a regular 3.5mm mini plug. for audio instead of RCA, because all the early Betamax did that. So this file was an early Betamax. It wasn't until they came out with the hi-fi machines that they actually put proper RCA plugs for the audio. With the first ones that came out, the SL2500, I think, even the 5000 series, until the 5200, they all used a mini plug, like the 2400, or the 2500, sorry. 2700 had RCA outputs because it was a stereo machine. The 5200, all the ones prior to that, they were mini plug. So power on. Load up a cassette. Oh, look at that. Play, and make sure that everything
I'll have
is
them altered still in a different way.
let's look at the picture.
We'll have a switching between super.
So there we go. There's my that's Beta 3 playing back, by the way.
It doesn't go into the details of that.
Where's
circuit.
my pause? Pause. How do I work this thing? I forget how the swing search thing works. Swing search. Okay. I'm getting some plasma interference there. 1 frame at a time forward. 1 frame at a time backwards. And we got that's in step 10, 1/10. There's slow-mo and 1/10. 1/5. Regular speed with no sound. And 2 times. And if we adjust the normal and fast tracking, we can track that up. Or over here. Somewhere in here I can track this up. Where's my and slow. There's a separate slow tracking for slow motion. This was a 3-head machine, so it did good slow motion. Forward and reverse. So now it's going backwards. And then back to regular playback. Of course, beta scan, or beta scan, forward, beta scan reverse, back to play. This had indexing. If you indexed, whenever you started recording, it made an index signal, and you could grab that, you could index
so
that.
A sharper image is. And also in the standard machine, to improve the signal to noise ratio, a noise canceller and a comb filter are employed.
That's the cover for this machine.
However, these contribute to reduced fidelity when editing tape, and the 900 is provided with the edit switch in order to obtain an electrically flat and natural response during tape editing, which is a funny way of saying we turn all these things off because they were deteriorating our signal in the first place. And the end result is this little graph that you see here. So basically what they're saying they're doing is where this is the normal curve where we show the boosting over at least most of the frequency spectrum at that stage. They cut that circuit out and theoretically gives us a flatter response. In other words, we eliminate the sharpness boost at that point.
He's talking about what the edit switch did.
You know, at times you'd say, well, what the hell? They put it in there to improve sharpness, and now you're taking it away, and we're supposed to have a better picture. What are you talking about? The answer to that is noise. Video noise is high frequency. So this is their way of reducing the actual noise of the signal at this stage by eliminating the sharpness boost at this point. That make sense? Later on we talk about the noise canceller and the filter business. Right now we're just talking
Anyway,
about
done. I'm happy. This thing works now.
Spectrum boost
Power switch. The clock counter, or the clock counter switch. Turn off the power. Turn it back on. Now the machine can be operated as a machine. I'll just have to make a little note that the power switch is not the power switch. The power switch is the actually, you know what? The power switch, when I press it,
appear to be as good.
it stops.
However,
It's still reading the power switch. So the power switch itself, because what happened on these machines is when you hit the power switch, it stopped it first and then the timer turned the power off. If I have it playing and I just hit the power button, it'll do an abrupt kill the power. So if you haven't stopped it on these machines, when you hit the power button, it would stop it first and then turn the power off. But now we're just killing the power to shut it down. But yeah, so that's interesting. See, the power switch is still being read by the microprocessor because when it's activated, it's hitting the stop to stop it from playing. And then there was a slight delay on the timer controller to shut it down. The power button is functioning as a stop button to shut it down. And I guess that would be important if you were fast forwarding, okay? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to hit that switch while it's fast forwarding, because what will end up happening is tape will end up spilling all over the place. So when you hit the power button on a normally functioning machine, it would put on the brakes, stop the tape from turning, and then shut the power off. So it would shut down gracefully. The power button will still shut it down gracefully, it just won't turn off the power. I have to do that with that little switch. That'll kill the power. But that was the whole point, to give me a way to turn the power on and off without having to unplug it. Because no one wants a machine that's running 24 hours a day. That kills the power supply. Shuts everything down. There we go. Okay, all done. And you know, I did this one just because I wanted to play the music out of my Betamax. That song will get stuck in your head if you listen to it a couple times. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next one. Bye.